नमस्कार, आप सभी का आईएएस भारत में स्वागत है। हमारे फ्री क्रैश कोर्स को ज्वाइन करने के लिए गूगल फॉर्म को फिल करें जो कि नीचे डिस्क्रिप्शन बॉक्स में दिया गया है। धन्यवाद।
Hello everyone, my name is Rohin Kumar and I have secured All India Rank 39 in UPSC Civil Services Examination 2025. This was my 5th attempt at UPSC and I have appeared in mains twice. That was one in 2023 and then again in 2025. So in today's lecture or in a series of lectures with IAS Bharat that we will be doing, I would be particularly discussing with you guys on General Studies Paper 1 for mains examination. Just to give you a brief context about it, in 2023 mains, I've scored 102 marks in General Studies Paper 1. And in 2025 mains, I've scored 115 marks in General Studies Paper 1. So that is a decent enough score. So in this series of lectures, we would be discussing the strategy that is needed for General Studies Paper 1. And in the following lectures, we would be discussing some of the details as to how can you approach the questions, what are the nuances of the syllabus that one needs to keep in mind while they are approaching the General Studies Paper 1. So with that, I would start right away with the today's lecture. Okay. So basically the General Studies Paper 1 that is there, it is divided into three major subjects, which is history first, second is the geography section, and third is the society section. There is a clear segregation both with respect to the syllabus pointers that are there in the syllabus, second with respect to the questions that are asked into the examination. And after analyzing the papers of like 5 to 7 years, we have come to a conclusion that the segregation is well defined, both in respect of syllabus and the questions. Just to give you a brief context about what all these disciplines they constitute in General Studies Paper 1. The first section that is there of history, it is broadly asked for 75 marks that is there. And it forms the 30% of this paper. So out of the 250 marks paper that is there in GS1, 75 marks of it is generally asked from the history section. So how they divide it? You must be having a basic idea about that the paper is divided into 10 marker questions and 10 15 marker questions. So the paper starts with the history section, and what they do is that the initial 3 questions that are there, they are asked from the history section in the 10 markers as well as in the 15 markers. So the segregation is very clear here that 10 marker 3 questions and 15 marker 3 questions, and that amounts to 75 marks. So this is a basic segregation that is there with respect to history. Now for the geography section that is there, geography, this forms the biggest chunk of this whole paper, which is 100 marks that is there. And out of the 100 marks, what they do is they ask you 4 10 marker questions and 4 15 marker questions. So this is the basic trend that has been observed in the last 5 to 7 years. There can be some changes like one question here and there from the history section or the geography sections. But largely, this is something that we can keep in our mind when we are head starting with our preparation, especially with respect to GS paper 1. So this amounts to 40 marks and this is 60 marks. So that totals to again to 100 marks. So this forms the 40% of the paper. So anyone who is approaching General Studies paper 1, they have to keep this thing in mind that they cannot afford to ignore the geography section, especially in the GS paper 1. Third section coming to it is the Indian society section, where they generally talk about the societal issues or some other things that we would be discussing in detail. So this is basically 75 marks again. They ask you 3 10 marker questions and they ask you 3 15 marker questions. So that again goes to 75 marks and 30% of the paper. So we have a clear segregation after this discussion that our paper is divided into 3 parts. History, which is 30%, 75 marks. Second, geography, the biggest chunk, 100 marks, 40% of the paper. Third is the Indian society section, which is 75, again 30%. So that amounts to 250 marks of your paper. Okay. So moving further, I mean, we have observed over the years that there's a basic observation with respect to the marks that people are scoring in general studies paper one. Either they are stuck somewhere around 90, somewhere 80s, 90s, and only the some of the lucky ones they get near to the 100 one. But there are a few people who are getting above 110, 100 above. And for general studies paper one, that is considered to be a very decent score because that both fields that gives you an advantage of 20 marks from other students who are scoring let's say 80 marks, 85 marks. So you are already having an advantage of around 20 marks in this paper. And this is a unique paper in the sense that the amount of efforts that you have to put into this paper and the returns that it provides to you, they are unique in their own sense. And we would be discussing these things in very detail now. Okay. So just a few basic things that you have to keep in mind, that the coverage of the subject, all the three sections that are there, that if you have to score and if you have to enter the club of 120 that we are targeting through these series of lectures, so we would be seeing that the first and foremost is that you will have to cover things up, and that is you cannot afford to sort of not cover any section of the papers that we are talking about. So first thing is definitely the coverage part. You will have to cover the content part. Second is something that becomes very important in this paper, given that 40% of this paper is geography only. So presentation is one aspect. I'm particularly talking about geography at this point of time. Presentation is one thing which anyone cannot afford to ignore in this paper, especially given that geography have a big chunk. Apart from that, good presentation, it always adds to your score. The thing that segregates an average copy from a good copy is, after having a good knowledge about this examination, we have come to this realization that something that segregates a good copy from an average copy is the presentation part of it. Within that presentation, there are numerous things. First is the diagrams that you are making. Second would be the way you are writing the content, the framework of your answers that is there, whether you are following a structured order in your answers or not. Okay, this is the second thing, presentation. Third would be the revision part. This, I don't need to say this thing or emphasize more upon this part for you guys, that this is one thing that ensures that how much you score. People, what they generally do is that they keep on reading different things, and they do not revise things up. And what happens in the end is that they are not able to bring all those things together. And something that you are not able to consolidate and not able to revise is something that you will not be able to utilize when it comes to the real examination. So revision becomes important, and when we are talking about revisions, it has to be multiple revisions. Like you are doing at least 5 to 7 revisions for one source that you have consolidated. Okay. So just to give you an idea, most of the students they are in the range of 80s, 90s, and some get somewhere around 100. But there are very few who cross this mark and they score 110 plus, 15 plus marks. So we would be discussing all those things which can help you get that score by which you can enter into the sweet club of 120 plus marks. Okay. So the next aspect that we are coming here, that whenever you are starting for anything, what is the best way to approach? The best way to go about is to have a background study of something. And what is the background that we get here? That let us say you have to prepare for something, you are going for an event. Then what would be the first thing you would be doing? You would be having some background study that what might have happened in the previous events that you might be attending. So this is the basic idea with which you have to approach this paper as well. That and what is it that helps us in identifying that what is the background of this particular thing. One, it is the syllabus that we have already emphasized upon. That syllabus is one thing that would differentiate the things. Second is the previous year questions that is there. So they are going to be the holy grail, and it goes for all the GS papers for all the stages of this examination. Okay, so we would be discussing about that how PYQs they act the real syllabus for this examination. They have defined some pointers for let us say for the society section. They have defined that globalization is one topic that is there in Indian society. But what about globalization? How would you approach globalization? I mean, there's no end in reading how much you can read about globalization. So, what is the best way to do that? Just go to the previous year paper, segregate all the questions that are there from the section of globalization, and you'll get an idea as to what all are the things upon which UPSC is trying to focus, especially with respect to globalization. Just to give you an example, UPSC has been asking this question that how globalization is impacting the Indian society. Sometimes they are asking how does it impact the cultural values of the society. Sometimes they are asking how does it impact the kinship relations. How does it impact the family structure? So these are different aspects that they have asked over the years, and that is something that we can trace from the previous year questions. Got it? So this is we would be discussing this thing in detail that how you have to approach the PYQs in detail. You identify a topic, you go into the previous year questions, and you look. These are the 5 things that they are asked about this topic, and you have something to read about that topic. And your efforts of reading that topic, it will not go directionless. So you will not be reading any random thing about globalization. Okay. And this is something that sets the people who are get selected. I mean, I say this thing very repeatedly that those people who are getting a rank and those who are unfortunate to not get a rank, there are very few basic things that differentiate this thing. This is one aspect of it. We tend to ignore these very basic things. What you have to do, just go and look at the previous year papers. But we have this inertia that we don't go and look at the papers. We just keep on postponing that someone else will do that. This is not important. But almost all of the students who are clearing this examination, they unanimously agree on this point that previous year questions forms the holy grail of this examination. So basically, I've discussed this thing briefly with you guys that the segregation, that how does a typical paper of general studies paper one look like in an examination. So we have started with the paper. We have opened the paper, and we would see that the question number 1, 2, 3, all of them are from history. So history is the broader categorization that we are talking about. There will be questions from ancient, from medieval, from art and culture, from the world history section, modern history, post-independence issues. So these are different subjects that are there within history as well. We would be discussing about these in detail as well. So you would see 3 questions in 10 markers. Then you are mentally prepared. If you've done a good study of the previous year questions, then you have a good account of like these are the 3 history questions I would be approaching. After that, I would go and write question number 4, 5, 6, 7 from the geography section. Then you are mentally prepared that the question number 8, 9, 10, they would be from the society section. So in an examination condition when everything, things seems to be working against you. So if you are having some direction about that how the paper might be approaching you, so having an understanding of these things, it always helps you. So we've discussed it, 8 questions straight away from the geography section, and again 6 questions from the society section. We would be discussing as to what are the important topics from these particular subjects as well. But just a brief idea here that what is the basic segregation that is there. So we were talking about when we were having a discussion on the previous year questions, that what is the trend? Trend is something that becomes important at all the stages of this examination. And trend is something that you are tracing something particularly. I've already told you that what they are asking for globalization. If you look a question from 2015 to 2025, you would see that they've asked this question, let us say 10 times. That you are able to trace that trend as to what they are particularly trying to ask. And that goes for all the things. Like from the geography section as well, there would be certain topics which gets repeated. There are certain themes which gets repeated. Even if the question, the verbatim of the question is not same in some of the cases, you would see that many of these themes gets repeated. You would see that there's a question on, let us say, in society section, I remember there was a question on distributive justice in 2020. And in 2025 mains examination, they've asked that how smart cities, they contribute to distributive justice. So they've already given you an idea that what is distributive justice. What was our work? Our work was that we are having a track of what has been asked in the examination previously. I mean, for someone who is reading this term, distributive justice, for the first time in 2025 mains examination, it might become difficult for the candidate that they are not able to approach the question. But if they have done that, the basic groundwork very well, then they would be in a position that they are doing, that they have some idea about that what is distributive justice in itself. And they would be able to connect that from the smart cities section. Got it? So some of the topics that are there, talking about geography specifically. So they generally talk about the geophysical or the hydromet phenomena that goes on, like the climatic. If there is a prominent climatic event that has happened, if there is a prominent geophysical event that might have happened, that there's a major earthquake that has happened. There's a landslide. We see that landslides are going on, particularly in the Western Ghats that is there. So when we keep a track of these things, then we would get some idea as to what would be the nature of questions that are asked. Some of the most celebrated themes that have been asked is the cyclone sections, tsunamis, cloudbursts. So in 2025, they've asked a very basic question in geography: what are tsunamis? How are tsunamis formed? Where they are? Where they are? The distribution of it. So what goes is that what should be our approach when we are reading a particular topic? That is that what is that particular thing, the basic concept that is there. Second would be the why of it. That first, let us say we are talking about tsunami. Then how tsunamis are formed. This would be the second natural thing that we would be discussing. Then where are tsunamis actually formed? Where they are, and if they go on to ask that what are the consequences of a particular event, be it landslides, be it tsunamis, be it cloudbursts. So these are some of the ideas that we would get when we are having a good understanding of the previous year questions. That when they are particularly, what they have changed it, 1 year they are asking about cyclones, what are cyclones, how they are formed, and what are the consequences on the coastal communities, let's say. Next year, they are asking that what are tsunamis, how they are formed, and what are the consequences. Next year, they are asking what are landslides, what is the distribution of landslides in India, how they occur, and what are the consequences on the local communities. So this gives an idea as to how UPSC is trying to frame the questions. Okay. So this is a brief list of topics that is there: cyclones, tsunamis, cloudbursts, plate tectonics. Again, becomes very important with respect to the geography section. Okay. Society, it rewards data plus balance. Basically, what society does is your understanding of the surrounding, or the issues that are there, prominent issues that are there in society. You would be seeing that you would see questions that you otherwise might have discussed in some of your discussions with your friends as well. That sometimes the institution of marriage is getting challenged in the recent years. So they might ask you a question related to that. There are issues that are rising with respect to women. So they would ask you some question on on women related issues. So what you have to do here is that you have to have a balanced approach here, both with respect to the content that is provided to you and how you are using that content. Let us say you are writing an answer on society and you've written something. You've written an argument for a point that is there, but you have to prove that point, that how that thing is valid. So here comes that how you validate and how you provide credibility to that particular argument, and that comes from plain data, the empirical data, some reports or something that you can cite. It could be National Family Health Survey reports that are there, or some other data sets that you might use here. Okay. Again, some of the important themes that are there from which questions are asked: urbanization. The very phenomenon of urbanization, it is very prominent in India, and we see that questions are being asked into that. Sometimes they are connecting it to the distributive justice with respect to the smart cities. Sometimes they are plainly asking you that what are the issues with respect to the urban poor, urban slums. So these are different themes upon which they have asked questions. Questions related to developmental issues that are there, disparities, regional disparities. So they ask questions of all these things. Globalization again is something that I've already discussed, that they ask so many questions. Almost every year from this topic they are asking questions. And some other social issues. It could be related to the influence of technology on the kids. So they have asked a question back then, that what influence the kids are having the technology or the mobile phones. So they frame questions that are there in the general parlance of the society. And what you have to do is provide that analytical aspect to it and prove it with respect to because you are someone who is representing the academic side of it. You are not someone who would be providing random arguments with respect to an issue that you might be discussing, be it for women-related issues or some other issue of society. You will have to provide some data sets to them that this is the reason that I'm saying this particular thing. Got it? So again, I'm repeating this thing that geography leads this block, but single-handedly, geography is not something that will sail you and get you into the 120 plus club that is there. Okay. You will have to strike some balance, as we were discussing in your answers, as well as in your approach when you are approaching this examination particularly. You are focused. If I have to share my strategy at this point of time, what I did that I would focus upon the geography section 1 as my priority. Second would be the society section. I would be dealing these questions, on a priority basis. This was the core zone of my preparation for general studies paper 1. Second zone would be the history questions that are there, because history sometimes becomes tricky, and some of the questions you might not be able to handle. But we have come up with some of the ways by which we can do some mathematics about it, that how they are actually asking the questions. So to make it a bit easy for you, we would be discussing all these things in detail. So this was the inner core of my preparation. Second would be the history. That doesn't mean that I'm not focusing upon history section. It means that I'm heavily focusing upon geography and society, and history as the peripheral subject, where I would not commit any kind of blunder that could dent into my score. Okay. So now coming to the next section, which particularly talks about the history section, which becomes a bit challenging, and I'm of a strong opinion that something that makes a big difference with respect to the score and the efforts that we put in general studies paper 1. History is one area where students commit most of the mistakes. Given the vastness of the subject, what we do is that when we start our general studies paper 1 preparation, we tend to focus and we tend to put efforts to a great extent, which doesn't reward in that. So we need to have a rational approach to that. we need to have something by which we could rationalize our efforts and reduce our efforts to such a level that it does not cost us in the examination, but it saves our efforts. Okay. So what you can do is, for history section particularly, I always believe that there has to be a thematic study that has to be done. Thematic study, there are some popular themes in the history section for each one of the subjects that are there. Just to give you, since it's a starting lecture, I would give a brief segregation within the history section. First is the ancient section that is there. Naturally, it is medieval India, modern India, world history, and post-independent India. So these are 5 major blocks from which questions are generally asked from the history section. So just to give you some idea as to which are the popular themes by which we could save some of our efforts. For the culture part, that is generally clubbed as one of the sections. So they ask you questions on the Harappan civilization that is there. They'll ask you questions on Vedic society. So they have been in last 4 to 5 years, they have been asking this question repeatedly, that they would take some aspect or some trait of the Vedic society and they would ask you to compare to the present society. That what were the conditions with respect to, let us say, for caste, what was the condition during the Vedic time, and is it still prevalent in the present times? So this is one thing. You are having a good idea about the Vedic age. Some of the basic features about Vedic age, that what was the economic life of people during Vedic age, the social life of those people, the status of women, and some of the, the important things that are related to life of that time. Second is the Harappan civilization, or Indus Valley civilization to be more specific. They would ask you questions. 1 year they are asking you question on the architecture of Harappan civilization. Second year they are asking you on the sculptures of Harappan civilization. So they would take different themes, particularly from the Harappan or the Indus Valley civilization, and they would frame questions on that. Got it? 2025, and history always sometimes gives you some bouncer questions as well, which are a bit difficult to handle, and we would be discussing as to how we can handle those questions as well. They have asked you about the Chandela art. They will ask you about Pallava art. So there are 1 or 2 questions in each one of the papers that are there. They are to test your resilience. They are to test how smartly you deal with something that is uncertain. So these, I generally call them the bouncer questions. And all you can do about these is, you cannot read everything. Just be very clear in this thing that there's a limitation up to which you can cover things up, especially when it comes to history, both in limbs as well as in main section. So you have to be very clear that you do the basic things that are there. After that, there's something that is extra that is there. Your skill set to deal with the questions, your skill set to write the answers that are there. Okay? So we have discussed about it. Pallavas, they ask you question on Cholas, they'll ask you on Chola art, temple architecture, they'll ask you on the Chola administration that is there, their approach outside India as well. So these are some of the things that they generally discuss. Again, the basic sources for the ancient medieval part is that you go through the book of Nitin Singhania, sir, especially with respect to the art and culture section. The first chapter that is there in Nitin Singhania sir's book, it gives you a chronological order, 1, 2, a dynastical order, that if they ask you a specific question about, let us say, Pallavas, about some Mauryas or some other dynasty that is there, so you have both idea about that how things have evolved. Let us say for sculptures, how things have evolved. how different dynasties have contributed into the sculptures that are there. So Nitin Singhania sir's book, which is again done based on the themes. They have a chapter on paintings, they have a chapter on sculptures, they have a chapter on coins, and these are the popular themes upon which UPSC generally asks the questions. Okay. Next comes the section of the modern India. Within the history component, this is one section which, is given that the importance of our freedom struggle. This is one section from where questions, generally they are asked, like out of 3 questions, they might ask you 2 questions from the modern history section only. So, but there's no end to that thing as well, as we have already discussed. What is the best way to go about it? What is the best way to deal with that? Again, you will do that. You'll identify some of the themes that are there, upon which questions are generally asked. UPSC has very clearly defined this thing, that they would be asking questions on some of the popular events that have happened. They'll ask you questions on the prominent personalities from that time. And when you see through the papers, you would be able to observe that they are asking this question. Or some important phases. One time, so just to give one example of each one of them, popular events, they'll ask you a question on 1857 revolt. They'll ask you a question on Quit India movement. They'll ask you a question on civil disobedience movement. What impacts did it have on the national movement? How did it mobilize the people? So they can frame the question in any ways. What we have to focus is that they are asking question on these particular things. Second is the personalities part. Every year they are asking questions. This year they have asked on Jyotiba Phule. Previously they have asked on Gandhiji, on Ambedkar, on Rabindranath Tagore. I remember from 2023 they asked a very interesting question, that they asked about Gandhiji and they asked on Rabindranath Tagore in one question only, and they've asked you to compare what were their approaches for education and what were their approach for nationalism. So they've made a very beautiful question, that you are reading about the personalities, and these are the particular things upon which you will have to highlight. So again, for the important phases, that what, let us say, socio-religious reform movements, they'll ask you question every now and then, that what impact did it have on the Indian society, how it can impact the modern thought process of Indian society. So they might frame questions in that directions. What we have to do, again, I'm repeating this thing particularly, that you'll have to identify those important themes that are there. After which you could look up at those things and you can rationalize your efforts, so that you are able to answer maximum of the question, not all of the question. Because questions that are particularly asked on Pallava art, questions that are particularly asked on Chandela art, and how they celebrate the vigor of life and something that they have asked, that is not humanly possible, especially when you are preparing for for one examination. So you have to be smart in that sense. Just to give you a basic idea about the sources, go through the spectrum or the Bipin Chandra. If you are in the starting of your preparation, read Bipin Chandra once, and you'll have some good idea about the things that have happened. After that, read the spectrum part, because it gives you a good summary of the events that have happened. The things have been covered point wise, so that thing helps. Okay. So these are 2 basic sources. World and post-independence, world history and post-independence issues. So these are 2 questions, 2 sections from which questions are asked, and you would see that they are asking some repeated questions from these topics. They are asking you, again, there are some themes. Let us talk about the world history section. You would be seeing that they would ask you a question on some of the revolutions that might have happened, like the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, or the American Revolution that was there. So they'll ask you question related to that. One, that how did it happen? What were the consequences of it? What impact does it have on the modern society? Got it. Second is the important events that have happened in the world history. We see the world wars, the two world wars that were there, and the events that have led to the world wars. We see the Cold War that was there. So these are some of the themes from which UPSC is repeatedly asking the question. To the extent that they've asked a question on French Revolution in 2024, and they've asked a question again in 2025 on French Revolution. Okay. French Revolution, World Wars. Talking about the post-independence issues. When you would look at the previous year papers, you would see that they are asking on the PYQs they are highlighting on some of the parts only. Sometimes they are asking that basically they talks about the consolidation of India after the independence happened. So they would ask you that how did it, the economic consolidation, the political consolidation that happened. So these are some of the things upon which you can discuss. Okay. So we have already discussed about what all are the things that you have to focus, what all are the things that you have to study. Now the second part that becomes important once you have read through all these things, when you have rationalized all your efforts, what all are the things that you would be reading and everything that we have discussed. Next part comes, which again is that would be related to one aspect is related to the answer writing section particularly, which is that when you are answering a question after having a good command over the content that we have discussed, what you'll have to focus and what is it that differentiates the 90s and the 110s or 120s is the thing that how well you understand the question, how do you contextualize the content that you have already read. That goes according to how UPSC is asking you the questions. They are trying to test at this mains stage. They are trying to test your analytical bent of mind, how you are able to connect different issues and make something really fruitful out of it. Okay, so they are not particularly talking about plain facts here. That look, this is the data that is related to women related issues. This is the data related to organization, not the plain facts, but how does it connect to the larger society? How does it impact the larger society? And other aspects, which basically gives us an idea as to how analytical you can be. Okay, so for that, one thing that's most important here is that you'll have to answer the demand of the question that is there. What is being asked to you in the examination, it becomes all the more important than the fact that what you know about the topic. We have studied a few things about globalization, about different architectural forms, or different things. But how to use that particular thing in examination, that would again depend upon what is the nature of the question that has been asked. Okay, so what is the best way to go about it? I tell it very simply, read the question twice. Go through the question twice, segregate the demand of the question that is there. What are the directive words that are attached to it? So, what are the directive words? I mean, after every question or in the starting of the question, you will see that how UPSC wants you to analyze that particular topic. Let us say they'll ask you to comment upon that, to critically analyze that particular thing. To what extent do you think? Elucidate it, give your opinion. So these are the different directive words that have been utilized by UPSC in over the years, and this gives you an idea as to how you have to approach that particular answer. You don't have to write everything that you know, but what is being asked in the examination. Got it? So if UPSC asks you to give your opinion, if it asks you to critically analyze, then what you have to do is that you'll have to give a balanced arguments on both the sides of it. Let us say that globalization is impacting the consumer behavior in India. Do you agree or critically analyze this particular statement? Then what you would do, first, in first section, you would agree to the fact that globalization has impacted the consumer behavior in India. In second part, you will do that. No, this is not completely true. There are other things as well which exist. Uh, Let us say that local cultures, they are still prevalent, handicrafts are still there. So there is a limit up to which globalization was able to affect the consumer behavior in India. Got it? So you have looked through both the sides of this of one topic that was there, and that has been decided with the directive word that is there. So the basic idea that I want to convey here is that you have to answer exactly what is being asked rather than what you know. This is one aspect, that you focus upon the directive words which tells you the demand of the question. Second is that one is that you have read something about a topic. Let us say you have read something about secularism, and you've wrote so many things about secularism, but you are, and they are largely theoretical things, or the things, the static part of the topic that is there, and you are not able to connect that thing with respect to the present times. Then it lacks somewhere some applicability of that concept. What UPSC is trying to test is that they are trying to check whether you are able to connect the key theoretical concepts that are there with respect to the current issues or the current things that are happening in the present times. Got it? And every answer of yours should reflect this particular thing. Even if UPSC has not explicitly asked you about something, you just try to give an applicable dimension to your answers. So if they are talking about climate change, then you'll have to focus upon the island nations that are there. One of the biggest impacts of climate change is the melting of the glaciers, because of which sea levels will rise, and the island nations that are there, which are on the verge of submerging. Then you cannot ignore in an answer that talks about climate change and its impact. You cannot afford to ignore the island nations that are there. And the questions are also nowadays they are sort of framed in such a manner that they are talking about the static part. One, two, they are also talking about the current aspect that is related to it. They've asked in 2025 about AI and drones and their application in respect to the planning in cities, and they already talked about the idea of smart cities and distributive justice. So distributive justice is a concept which talks about the distribution of resources or the benefits equally in all the sections of the society. So this is a concept that is there that you might be studying in your society section, but connecting it to the smart cities, connecting it to the urban poor, that how the urban poor, they are getting impacted when cities are growing, and how can we rope in the idea of distributive justice here so that their plight or their miseries, they can be reduced. So this is the interconnection or the interlinkages that UPSC is trying to check from your side. They ask you some questions again, which at the outset they seem that they are very difficult questions. So there was a question in 2024 which talked about the concept of demographic winter. Most of us have not read what is demographic winter, but you could make some sense that when UPSC is asking a question on population, what were the themes it has been sort of focusing in the past years? You would see that UPSC is asking a question that what is the status of population in the developing countries? What is the status in the developed countries? How does the increasing population in developing countries impacting its development? How the population in the stagnating population in developed countries, it is impacting the development of those countries. And one fine year they ask you what is demographic winter, and you're confused that we have not read it. Our standard sources, our booklets, they do not provide for this. What you have to do is that once you have done the good work, then you would have some idea that they are talking something about the demography and something they've attached a word which is winter. So what you can basically, very naturally, what you can correlate with respect to winter is that something that relates to shrinking, something that stagnates, something that reduces the productivity. So you can directly correlate when you combine both these concepts. The demographic winter is something that is related to the stagnating population. Then you can go ahead. Once you have this idea, then you will be able to sort of approach a 15 markers question as well. And that was the trick here. They've asked question on fast food, on health. You would discuss everything that is there. Like there is Eat Right movement that is there, the Fit campaign that is run by the government. So you'll have to link all those things that with the static things that you are doing. So the next thing is that how you have to prioritize things up, how you have to order your preparation, what would be the sections. I mean, I've already discussed this idea very briefly, that how would you make different zones of your preparation, which will decide that the amount of efforts that you would be putting. This is the area where you would be putting your maximum efforts. This will be the area where you will reduce your efforts, and this will be the area where you will put least of your efforts. So this is what we have done here. That geography, we have repeatedly said this thing that you cannot afford to ignore. And within geography, looking at the nature of questions, be either it is the physical events that are happening, or some human geography, or some economic geography related themes that they are particularly focusing upon. So this is the biggest block that is there, and map friendly in the sense that you can easily make diagrams and convey your ideas. Rather than writing so much, you can convey through diagrams and through the presentation thing that we were talking about. Second is the society. So you can basically prepare a toolkit for society, for the section of society, wherein you can focus upon the reports, the data, examples, some good use of keywords, some key concepts that you are studying in your standard sources. You are going through the newspapers, you are going through some of the copies of the toppers for that matter. Next is the ancient and the medieval section that you have to, and within that as well, you'll focus on some of the themes that we have already discussed, that which all are the themes that you have to focus. Second is next is the modern and the freedom struggle. They ask you repeatedly from this section. So this is something after once you have gone through the modern history section, you would expect something that would fall in your area, something that would comfort you in the paper, and you would be able to deal with that thing particularly. Next is the world history and post-independence. So basically, this provides you an order of how you can put in your efforts so that your preparation doesn't become directionless and you are able to utilize things very effectively. So now we are talking about how a typical 120 plus answer has to look like. When you are attempting a paper, what are the things while you are writing an answer which have to be kept in mind so that you are able to score 120 plus or something that we are probably targeting. First is the basic thing, which is the structure. Structure becomes very important. I always say this thing, that a copy which has a consistency of structure in it, let us say from the question number 1 to question number 20, there's a structure that has been followed by the aspirant. That copy would be rewarded compared to a copy that has been written very haphazardly. Some of the answers are good, some of the answers are not that good or average. So if you are able to maintain that consistency within your copy, that always rewards. And what we can do here is to focus upon the structure. So what is the basic structure that an answer could follow is, we all know that the basic IBC framework that we generally do discuss, which is intro, body, conclusion. I would make it very simple for you that what an introduction is, what a body is, conclusion is. All you have to do is, when you are starting your answer, I've already told you, you read the question twice. One, you identify the directive word. Let me do that systematically. Read the question properly. identify the demand. Let us say there are three demands into the question. Your next job is, when you are reading the question, you have identified what is the central theme of this question. What are central themes? It is urbanization, it is globalization, it is communalism, it is secularism. These are the central themes of the question. And when you are starting with your answer, what you have to do is you will focus upon the introduction. Introduction is you are addressing the central theme of the question. You are telling the examiner that I have understood the core of this question and I am addressing it right here in the very initial of my answer. And you would do that very precisely. You would write 2-3 lines, maximum 4.5 lines, wherein you are providing either a basic definition of it, or you are having some good data sets about it, some facts, some examples, some current event that is very relevant here. Keep in mind one thing here, that the things that you are writing here, they have to be very relevant with respect to what is being asked. It can be a quotation as well. Sometimes we use quotations in the society sections to start your answer. Second is the main body, which forms the core. Like intro is the starting of it, where you are addressing the central theme. You are telling someone that I know this particular thing. Main body is that you give all the details that are there with respect to that particular topic, within which you will discuss all the different dimensions that have been asked. These are the 3 different dimensions that have been asked. You put the first heading, address the first dimension, right? Let us say you have written 4 points in first dimension. You would do that. And they would again be diverse points that would touch upon different, let us say, one on economic aspect, one on cultural aspect, one on societal, and likewise. Again, you will come to the second part and you would write all the different points that you could write for that topic. Third dimension, and you are done with your main body. Keep in mind for main body that you do not overstretch it. Give equal amount of space to the different dimensions that you are supposed to discuss, and within every dimension, try to make pointers. Try to write in the point format so that it becomes very clear to the examiner, and they are able to evaluate it very effectively. So if you are reducing the efforts of the examiner in reading your test copies, they would make it some easy for you to get good marks in that sense. Got it? Something value addition. Value addition again goes with the same things, that while you are elaborating your answers, you are using data, examples, and if you feel that you can use some good diagrams into your answers, that always helps. And you can use for that like simple indicative sketches, simple diagrams, simple maps that you can use. And when we are talking about general studies paper 1 particularly, we know that geography is the biggest chunk there. So for that, you'll have to focus upon diagrams very religiously. You'll have to make about, if they have asked you about cloudburst, then you have to make a diagram of it. How does a cloudburst looks like? How does a cloudburst forms? That when the clouds they ascend, but that is the phenomena that is happening. When they are talking about tsunamis, you will make a diagram about the tsunamis, and so on. Third part of this framework is the conclusion part. I mean, there is this thing that people often ignore this when they overly focus upon the main body part, that either they are not left with the space by the end of it, and they don't sometimes consider it necessary that they have to conclude the thing. So what does a structured answer looks like? That it gives you a good start. It addresses everything that has been asked, and in the end, what you generally do is you conclude the thing on a good note, on a positive note, on a hopeful note. You try to give something constructive about it. Even if you see that in your day-to-day life, when you meet someone, you would greet the person, introduce yourself, then you would do all the chit chats. Then when you would be living from that particular place, you would say some good things about, or some hopeful things, so that when we talk about it, so it becomes an order in itself. There's a structure that has been followed. Okay. So these are the things. And again, I would say for the conclusion part, especially that you'll have to be positive in your outlook. You'll have to be solution centric. It doesn't have to be sound pessimistic while you are particularly dealing about the conclusion part. So this is one thing that we have discussed, the structure of your answer that will take you to 120 plus. Next is attempting of the paper. You will have to attempt all the question in the examination, despite the fact whether you know the question or you don't know the question. When you are stuck in a situation where when you don't know a particular question, what you have to do, just go to the basics of it. I always say it, if they are talking you about twisters, if they are talking about demographic winter, just go to the basics of it. What is the most basic thing that you recall? Demographic winter, if you decode that word, if you go into the very basics of it, that it talks something about population. Winter is something that reduces productivity in some senses. It is something that relates to cold phase of something. Something cold, something related to population. You would be able to make that sense when you have done decent enough studies that it talks about the shrinking of the population, and you would be able to deal the answer. That's why I say go to the basics when you are stuck in any of the situations. Okay. So attempt all the questions, I would say. Within this as well, there's advice that you're able to attempt at least 15 questions to be very good, of very good quality. 15 questions of very good quality, and let us say 3 questions, 2-3 questions of average quality where you are decently addressing the demand of the question. It happens with most of the people who are getting selected and who are clearing mains examination and again, that 1 or 2 questions, they just address it to the extent that it doesn't create any blunder when the examiner sees to the copy that what the candidate has done. 1. 2, that you have left the copy idle, left that particular answer idle, you have not written anything. That is a sure thing that you will not be getting any mark into that. Write something, some basic definition, some data, any example that you are able to correlate. Put in something so that the examiner might give you half mark, 1 mark, 1.5 marks. Okay. So we are talking about the 5 habits that takes you from the score of 90 to 125. So first is you attempt the complete paper. Second, you do the value addition that is there, and we have discussed it, that how you will do the value addition part. Third would be underline the keywords. Underlining becomes one important thing of presentation. When we talk about presentation, we confine ourselves to making maps, making diagrams. But let me very briefly tell you how a structured answer has to look like when it comes to underlining part. You've read a question, you've written the intro. You come to the first dimension, you've written the heading. Heading 1, point number 1, point number 2, point number 3 will confine to this only. This is your answer copy. You make a simple flow diagram, show that how this is a flow diagram. Point number 1, write a point heading. What I used to do is that I used to double underline the heading part, double underline the point heading that is there. I would make a simple mark here, elaborate the point, wherein I'll do the value addition part that we have discussed. Within this, you'll add your examples. Within this, you'll add all the data sets that you have to use. This is the point heading. And when you're elaborating something, you'll have to underline the thing. And when we talk about underline particularly, don't do that for all the write-up that you have written. Underline is something that segregates from, let us say we have written a write-up of 4 lines, then you have to highlight something. So for that thing to be highlighted, you'll have to be very specific and very particular as to which important things that you want the examiner to read directly. That would be the part that we would be underlining. Got it? Again, second point, double underline. And this is a typical answer that would look like for me. Then I would write the conclusion. A proper structure is there. Intro, body, conclusion, and we are done. Second is answer the directive, focus upon, which again tells the demand of the question. We have already discussed this part in detail. Second is, the last thing is conclude forward. So you'll conclude that thing with a hopeful note. You'll conclude that with a good amount of positivism that can be done with the goals that we have made as a society, as a country. So try to rope in those things. For example, you give in the Amrit Kal, you talk about the idea of Vikshit Bharat, you talk about the sustainable development goals that are there. Okay. So we'll again briefly discuss about the sources for the subjects and what could be some of the topics upon which you can particularly. Though we have recently done that, but we would do some part here as well. We have discussed this thing in very detail, that what the PYQs and the trends they tell us about the history and culture section. If they ask you question related to architecture, they ask you question related to the Gandhian phase, they ask you about the different phases, that how economics during the Britishers, the phenomenon of deindustrialization that had happened, about the economic drain that had happened and that has been highlighted, the Bengal famine that has happened, the partition of the Bengal in 1905, or other events important. And we read all of these things during our film stage. It is just that the viewpoint of looking at it changes. In the films part, you are looking at it objectively from a factual angle. At this point, it becomes more of an analytical, that how these events have happened, what consequences they had on the national movement, on the psyche of the people, on the Britishers and their approach, how they would rule the country. So these are some of the things that we have already discussed: the Gandhian phase, the colonial impact, and within world history and post-independence as well. What are the important topics that are there that we have discussed? Okay. Again, to talk to you about the resources, old NCRTs for the ancient and medieval section. So go through them. These are written, I would say, people, they have a difference of opinion whether to read the new NCRTs or the old NCRTs. Generally, people refer to the old NCRTs. But even if you have done the new NCRTs or some good books, like within old NCRTs, we focus upon the book by R.S. Sharma for Ancient India, the book of Satish Chandra for the medieval part. We read the book, NCRT book of Arjun Dev in world history section. So you can go through these books so that you have a decent amount of understanding about the things that would be there. For the ancient and medieval, we have discussed Nitin Singhania about the art and culture section. For the modern, we have discussed about Spectrum and Bipin Chandra, where you would see all the phases of the modern India, whether the decline of the Mughals or the coming up of the Britishers, the British rules, different phases within that, the freedom struggle, and so on. World history, sometimes people also follow the book of Norman Lowe. So, this again becomes a personal choice, and the amount of efforts and the time that you are having, that you are willing to put in. So, Arjun Dev's NCRT is also good, and this book by Norman Lowe, it is also good. Next section is the geography basic strategy. Just to give you a sum up here, we have already discussed about the significance of geography in this complete paper, the number of questions that they have asked in this, they have been asking, and the important themes upon which they have been repeating the questions, and linking the static with the content part. it becomes very important in geography section as well. When there's an event of landslide, major landslides happening in India, it is most probable that they would be asking questions related to that. Okay. What would be the basic sources for that? Again, first, the basic NCRTs that are there, that you have to go through, the 11th and 12th NCRTs that is there, they helps you decently in having a good understanding about it. Second step is sometimes the questions that are asked from the human geography section, they becomes a bit difficult for the students. So what you can do is, there's a book by G.C. Leong as well. G.C. Leong's geography book. So it is a decent book in the sense that the important things that are highlighted, be it earthquakes, volcanoes that are there. So they're explaining the mechanism of them, that how they are formed, what is plate tectonics, and they're discussing these things in very detail. Okay. Simple approach. What is the thing? What is the mechanism of its formation? I'll take an example, volcano. What is a volcano? How volcanoes are formed? That is the mechanism part. Next is the distribution, where all are the volcanoes generally found in the world. What impacts does it have? And so on. Maps and diagrams in geography becomes very important. Try that you at least make one diagram in a 10 marker and one diagram. Let me write it here. For a 10 marker, at least I am saying, you can make 2 diagrams as well. For a 10 marker, 1 diagram. For a 15 marker, please try to make at least 2 diagrams so that the answer looks presentable. Geography is a special science that talks about the distribution of phenomena on different parts of the world, how things are, how they, the mechanism part that we are in. So we can very easily find some maps, some diagrams that we can incorporate in our answers. Okay. Yeah, this becomes very important, and it helps you not only in the mains stage, but also in the film stage as well. That sometimes people treat mapping as a different subject, but when you're reading through the geography, what you can do is just take out 10-15 minutes and scan through the basic NCRTs, the Oxford and Atlas that is there. Go through that basic atlas. Just open the page that talks about the distribution of rivers in the country, the peninsular rivers, the Himalayan rivers. Just have a basic idea and live it. And when you will be doing this exercise, let us say for 10-15 minutes, and that too for, let us say, 1.5 months, then you'll see that most of the things you have been seeing them repeatedly, and they're getting imprinted within your memory. You cannot sit down a single day and you would remember all the rivers. Even if you have done that the next day or the next day, you'll forget that thing. So a better way to go about is that you do those things consistently and for a shorter period of time, so that when those things come again and again before your eyes, they'll help you. Okay. Society section. Again, we have talked about the important topics of urbanization, the women-related issues, communalism, secularism. They've been asking these questions on these topics repeatedly. Syllabus is very small, very defined, and you will find questions exactly from the syllabus pointers that are there. There will not be a point that when you will be in a position that they've asked a question which is out of the syllabus. There would be something that would be related to the syllabus pointers that are there. Okay. Mostly current affairs linked, in the sense that if there's something important happening and that is related to some of the syllabus pointers from the society section, that would be reflected here. Okay. To give you a snapshot, data, examples, balancing, it becomes important in society section, because having some radical ideas that for an administrator particularly we talk about, even if we are looking at a particular issue, then as aspiring administrators, we have to be very balanced in our outlook. We have to be very balanced in our approach, even if there's an issue that is very prominent, we'll have to go and look into the root causes of that particular issue. And we have to avoid any kind of biased viewpoints on that. We might be having on certain social issues that this is one mistake that people sometimes commit in society, in the society section, that they have their own formed opinions on some of the social issues. Please try that you do not reflect in that. You have to be very balanced, you have to be neutral, you have to be very impartial with respect to your approach when you are dealing with a section of society. Secularism, gender, demography, organization, they repeatedly ask questions on these things. Okay. Talking about the sources, the basic NCRTs, society that is there. Apart from that, we can also you can refer the book by Pearson publication that has been written by Senthil sir. So it's a very good book that has been designed in a manner that it covers all the syllabus pointers. And we have repeatedly been saying this thing that they ask questions from the syllabus pointers, and there's a book that provides you already something that most of the things have been cooked in that, and that very beautifully. You're able to identify, you're able to see all the things that is necessary from the examination point of view that is compiled at one place. Just go and read that book and you would be done with most of the things that are there in the society section. Again, these things, they keep on adding after you have read through the basic book that is there. We have discussed about Senthil sir's book by Pearson publication. Just build upon that thing, how you would do that. And this is something that is never ending. Till the examination time, you would be adding something, some report that might be related to some of the topics, some data points, some good case study that you might find in the newspapers. Just add it to the basic sources that you're reading. Okay. Again, the same thing, discuss the key concept that is there, explore the different dimensions related to it, explain that particular thing, elaborate that with good value-added content, data, examples, committees, reports, everything, and a good way ahead. Never write a one-sided answer. Again, we have discussed this thing that you have to be very balanced when you are dealing, particularly with the questions related to Indian society, because there are certain things which might, beyond a point, they become very sensitive. So you have to be very calculative. Calculative in the sense that you have to be rational as well, and you have to give an impression that you are not someone who is looking a particular thing from a biased perspective. So we have discussed some of the things that what are the different related to different subjects, what are the important areas, how you would approach your answers, what would be the basic approach that you would be following. Just to give you a small snapshot of how a typical paper have looked like in the past 2 years, just to give you correlating it to the discussion that we already had, that how they ask questions repeatedly, and I'll briefly demonstrate that here as well. In 2025, we have identified some of the themes that we have discussed and that have been asked as well. Again, Harappa, we have discussed it in detail about the religious policy of Akbar. Again, an important personality from the medieval times. We talked about how the current events they relate to the issues that are there and how you can explore them, like climate change, sea level rise, tsunamis. We have discussed smart cities, urban poverty. So how they are linking all these things. We have already had good amount of discussion on all these things. Same goes for 2024 Rigvedic to later Vedic times. How things have changed. They are asking question on this thing. They are asking a question related to events that are leading to Quit India movement, the sea surface temperatures, which are again the basic concepts in geography. And you can go through these different topics. And while you are having your study, you can just get some idea that this should be the basic approach that has to be there while you are dealing with that particular discipline. We have discussed this thing previously in detail what would be the different resources that you would be following. We have just compiled it at one place for all the three subjects for his art and culture, medieval, modern. We have done that. What for the post-independence? We have not discussed it previously. For post-independence, there's this NCRT, which talks about the post-independence issues. Just go through it and you'll have some good amount of idea, and that would be sufficient enough for you to answer questions that are being asked. Okay. World history, we have done that. Geography, again, NCRT, Atlas, GCLEO, Society. Just add sample source book by Pearson publication here. Okay. And current affairs, again, your basic standard approach of newspapers, the compilations. So the value addition and everything that you do, once you have written your answer at your home, let us say you have written an answer on society. IS Bharat, Aram IS, they provides you with the do not miss series that is there. So what they basically do is that they have written some good framework, some good answers on the previous year questions. You just, once you have completed a topic, pick a question from the previous year, write your own answer, compare that from the framework that has been provided in the do not miss series. And you would have a fair amount of idea that which all are the areas that I need to focus so that the level of my answer, it improves. Okay. So this is one way of doing that. Do not do that thing previously that you are doing that and you are demotivating yourself. Write an answer, take the lessons from it, and try to incorporate that thing the next day. Next day, write an answer on your side. Compare that from the framework that has been provided in the do not miss series. Then you would see that if you are able to make that progress or not. After writing, let us say for 10 days, you would definitely see that the answers that you have written on the first day and when you compared it, and the answer that you have written on the 10th day and when you have compared it, you would be able to track that the progress that you have made. Okay. So this is the way to go about it. So this was it. The basics about what is general studies paper 1, what all are the different sections, what are the different sources that you might follow, what could be your writing approach, how can you revise things effectively, how can you identify the important areas and focus upon that so that you are able to utilize your time and efforts very smartly. And with that, we would be ending this lecture. And in the upcoming lectures, we would be discussing the rest of the things in very detail. Till then, thank you so much and see you guys next time. Thank you so much.
For more such informative content, follow our social media handle. The links are given below in the description, and you can also scan our QR code given in your screen. Thank you.